All right, welcome back to this third video. In this video, we are going to wrap up the last three types of adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. In the last two videos, we covered the first two types. I would make sure to start there if you haven't seen those already. So today, all three types that we are going to be doing are subtraction. I want to tell you up front what those three types are, and then we will jump right in and get started. So the first type of problem that we are going to do, I'm just going to keep going with our numbering here. This is going to be type number 5, is what we call positive minus a negative. So we're going to do a positive minus a negative. It's problems that look like this: 10 plus -1. Okay. Then we will do type number 6. Whoops. And we're going to make that first number negative. So we're going to be doing a negative minus a negative. And so that would be something that looks like this. And we are going to wrap up our final kind of subtraction and our final type of problem overall with negatives minus a positive. And so that is going to be something like this. All right, this is what we're going to cover today, and then we will be done with all 7 types of adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. So let's jump right in with the first one for today, type number 5. All right, here we go. So we have a positive minus a negative number. There is one concept to know about this that's going to make this problem a lot easier to do. When we're subtracting a negative number, it's the same as adding. Subtracting a negative is the same as adding. So 5 minus -2 is the same as 5 minus 2. A lot of my students, and what I see most people do when you see this double negative here, is to turn it into a plus sign. And if it's easier on your eyeballs, you can also write it below, and it turns into this. The double negative turns into a positive. There's a lot of different ways to explain this. In your math class, you've probably seen different ways of thinking about this. I'm not going to go into all of them here. We're doing this in kind of more of an advanced way right now. And so what I want to do is train your eyeballs to see the double negative turning into a positive. Whoops. And so this is going to become a plus there. So what do we have now? It becomes a basic addition problem. 5 plus 2 gives you 7. That's it. So at first the problem looks really complicated because you've got all these negative signs and minus signs together. The double negative turns into a positive. That makes it addition. All right, let's do a couple more of these. 7 minus -1. See those double negatives? Some kids will just put a line here so they can kind of see the cross. Other people will kind of connect it in like that. So all of a sudden we have an addition problem. There you go. And let's do one more. We're going to subtract that negative out front there. 6 minus negative 3. See the double negative? We're going to turn this into a plus sign. And that's it. Once you get rid of that double negative and transform that into a plus, it becomes positive plus a positive. You're always just going to be adding two positive numbers. And that's it for this one. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of problems on this next page for you to do on your own. Go ahead and get started whenever you like. Go ahead and do them on a whiteboard, in your notebook, on a piece of paper. Okay, if you need a little bit more time, no problem. Go ahead and pause the video and finish up, and then we'll go over them together. All right, so we've got a bunch of problems here that start with a positive out front, and we're subtracting a negative number from that. Remember that basic concept, subtracting a negative, that double negative, is the same as adding a positive. So how did you do that first one? We see that double negative, we're going to turn it into a plus. 2 plus 3, that gives us our addition problem there. Same with the next one, double negative turns into a positive. Hopefully these are starting to feel pretty smooth for you. 5 plus 4 gives you 9. It's a little bit easier, obviously, when it's all the same type of problem, right? You've got this pattern in your head now. We'll take some time to practice all of these different ones mixed together at the end to give you a little bit more of that practice. Okay, 9 minus negative 1, double negative, boom, I'm turning that into a positive number. So I'm getting 9 plus 1. There's our 10. How does that feel? Not too bad? Okay, great. So that is type number 5 overall. We've just got 2 more types to go. The next type of problem, I'm going to tell you, there's no new math. You now know everything you need to know to be able to do this type of problem. So this is type number 6. Let me give you an example of that problem, and then we'll talk it through. So we're going to start with a -2, and let's go -5 out front. So this problem is different than the pink problems we were just doing because the first number is negative. But if you look beyond that, do you see we still have a double negative here? It doesn't matter what is out front. What do you know about that double negative? What can we do there? Right? We want to make this problem simpler, one step at a time. So we know, boom, we can change that right away. So then we have -2 plus 5. Okay, you've seen this one before. We did this one in the last video. Now we have an addition problem. We have a negative out front plus a positive number here. Do you remember what to do here? So you might want to check your notes if you want to refresh on your own, pause it and give yourself a chance to look at your notes. Otherwise, let's do this together. So if the negative is out front, we know that we can use the commutative property, right? Flip these around. And then what we'll have is 5 plus -2, right? Then we know that we can combine these. Whoops, let me put that in yellow for us. Plus a negative. Adding a negative is going to turn into subtraction. 5 minus 2. 5 minus 2 is 3. Okay, it's a lot of steps, but if you take it one at a time, you've done all these pieces before. Yes? So let's go through this again from the top. So we're starting with a negative minus a positive. We're going to, a negative minus another negative. The double negative is going to turn into a positive, which brings us to here. A negative plus a positive. We can flip those around, which is going to give us a positive minus a negative. And then we can take that plus and negative and turn it into a subtraction problem. So we have 5 minus 2 equals 3. So it's very important here to go slow. It's important to spread out and write big, write down all your steps rather than trying to do this in your head or trying to go from the top all the way down to the answer. Do you see how many steps there are here? When kids are doing this math, a lot of times we're doing this all in our head. We don't have to, we can write it out like this. How about we do another one? Okay. So here we go. Let's start with a -1 out front. And how about we subtract a -6? So stop and stare. We want to ask ourselves, how can we start to make this problem easier? We know it's going to take a couple of steps to get to the answer, but you can do this. You know all of the types of concepts that you need to be able to solve this. So we've got this double negative. When we see this double negative, what are we going to do? Yeah, we're going to turn it into an addition sign, and we're going to rewrite our problem to make it look a little bit easier. Okay, already it's looking easier. It's an addition problem. -1 plus 6. Right, so we're going to flip those around in our head. Actually, sorry, that was a slip, not in our head. We're going to flip those around on paper, the 6 and the -1, which is going to bring us to here. Okay, then we have plus a negative, which we can turn into subtraction. So we have 6 minus 1. Our answer to this problem is 5. All right, how are we doing on this? So I'm going to write another one on the screen right over here, and I'm going to give you some time to try this one on your own. So how about we do, let's do a -2 and a let's do another -6 here. And we are subtracting them. So go ahead and pause the video here. Take as much time as you need to give this one a try, and then unpause and come back when you're ready to go over this. Okay, here we go. How'd you do on this? We have a -2 minus a -6. Let's go over this together. So what was the first thing that you did? Most likely, you saw that we have that double negative here. The double negative is going to turn into an addition sign. So we have our -2 plus 6. We've turned the subtraction problem into an addition problem. What did you do next? Did you flip them around to put the positive number first? So now we have 6 plus -2. It's the same thing. We use the commutative property. And then what? We've got a plus next to a negative. Plus a negative is the same thing as what? Subtracting. So there we go. 6 minus 2 equals 4. And we are done. All right, how are we doing here? Would you like to practice some more? How about I give you, we usually do four problems of practice, but these ones are pretty long. How about we do 2 more of these? And then I actually want to show you a level 2 problem. This is a level 1 problem. It gets one step more complicated than this. But again, no new math. You'll see, you'll be able to do it just the same. It's just going to take one more line of math than this. But let's practice with 2 more level 1 problems, and then we'll level up. So here we go. So I'm going to give you 2 problems on this page. And once you've got them, we go ahead and pause and give these a try. Just a couple of reminders. Go slow, 1 step at a time. Write out all of your steps. Really spread your work out and give yourself lots of space so you're not crowding your brain. And remember, you know all of the math that you need to be able to solve this. So if you get stuck, stop and stare. Also use your notes that you've taken so far on all of these different steps. All right, I will see you when you are done. Okay, let's take a look at these solutions. So here we have the solution to the first problem, taking that double negative up top here, turning it into a plus, using the commutative property to move that negative number to the second place and moving the positive number to the first place, and then changing that plus and negative into a subtraction sign, and then subtracting it out like a basic subtraction problem. All right, let's look at the next problem. So for this one, first taking that double negative, turning it into a plus, changing that into an addition sign, using the commutative property to flip that 8 and the negative 2 to put the positive number first, 8 plus negative 2, seeing that plus and negative, that can be turned into subtraction. 8 minus 2 gives you 6. Okay, let's move on to a level 2 problem. And I think you're getting so advanced at this point. I might just give you a problem like this. I'll make the numbers pretty friendly. You know, how about you see if you can do this one on your own? Give it a try, and then we'll go over it together. You'll see at the end why it's a level 2, and just to give you a hint on that, there's going to be one last step at the end that you have to do. But it's, again, I say this all the time, there's no more new math. Everything else is the same. So go ahead and pause it here and give that a try. Use all of your strategies that we've been talking about, and then we will go over it together. Okay, let's talk about this together. So when you see this, this problem looks the same as the problems we were doing on the last page. We're starting with the negative, subtracting another negative. So we just got to get started on this. Again, the double negative, boom, we're going to turn into a positive sign. That's the same. So we have negative 5 plus 2. The negative is out front. We like it to come second so we can subtract it later on, right? So we're going to flip these two around, and that's going to take us to this. Same as before. So now we've got 2 plus a negative 5 plus a negative is going to turn into subtraction. This is where we have the difference between this and the last page. What do we have here? Subtraction problem is a little bit trickier because we have a little minus big. You know how to do little minus big. Do you remember how to do that? So we know that big minus little is 3. So little minus big is going to be negative 3. That's it. So you can see all of these steps. It doesn't matter what the numbers are. You know all of the concepts. You know all of the steps that you need to do to be able to solve this problem piece by piece. Okay, let's do one more, and then we will move on to the last type of problem, and then you'll be done with everything. Let's go like this. Okay, go ahead and pause this and work on this on your own, and then we will pop up the solution. Okay, how did that go? -8 minus -1. Let's take a look at how you do this. So here we have the work. Taking the double negative, turning it into addition. Once we have that addition problem, seeing that that negative is coming out in front, moving that so it's positive plus a negative. Transforming that plus a negative into subtraction. 1 minus 8 is a little minus big. So we do the big minus little, and then we get the negative version of that solution. So our answer to this is -7. Okay, good work. We will practice some of this at the end, but for now we are going to move into the final type of integer problem, one final kind of subtraction to round out these 7 different types of problems that you have been learning. So we are on type number 7. I will tell you up front that this one, for a lot of brains, tends to be the most confusing one. So if it is to you, no worries, you are not alone. And if it's not for you, forget what I said. Let's do this. So we're starting with a negative, and we are subtracting a positive number. And so in order to do this, what I want to do is go back and review something that you have seen before, which is when you are adding a negative, it's the same thing as subtracting, right? So here, let me draw this a little better for you. So that is the same as that, right? So you would never do it on this kind of problem because 8 minus 1 is easy to do, but we could rewrite a problem with a negative sign as 8. We could change this back to plus -1. If that makes sense, we can go from a minus to plus a negative in the same way that we can go from plus a negative to a minus. They mean the same thing. Adding a negative is the same as subtracting. That's what we learned in the second video, the last video. So we could work backwards and say subtracting is the same as adding a negative. Does that make sense? Subtracting is the same as adding a negative. So we are going to apply that over here. Before I do that, let me type that out for you. So subtracting is the same as adding a negative. So see how we are subtracting that 7? This subtracting is the same as adding a -7. And you know what? I'm going to change this like this. -2 minus 7 is the same as -2 plus -7. Hopefully that's starting to sink in. If it's not fully there, don't worry about it. We're gonna work some more of these to make that simpler. But look what we have here. We did this in the first video. This is problem type number 2, a negative plus a negative. I've got 2 negatives. I'm adding 7 more negatives. Boom. There are other ways to teach this. You could talk about having 2 and subtracting 7 more, which is making it more negative. Again, making it more negative is the same as adding more negatives in there. But what I've found is this strategy is what makes it the easiest for a lot of the students that I work with, because then they can see the addition sign on that paper. Okay, let's do a couple more of these. So -1 minus 9. Let's do each of these together. Okay, we're subtracting a positive here, and we're starting with a negative out front, right? So when we do this, the -1 is going to stay the same, but this is the same as adding -9. So the -1 plus the -9, we're just adding negatives. Remember that? 1 negative person, 9 negative people. What do you get? 10 negatives, -10. Okay. Let's scooch this in and do one more together, and then I will give you 4 to do on your own. So let's go -5, and we are, whoops, subtracting regular 2, not -2. Okay, I've got a negative and I am subtracting a positive from there. So subtracting a positive is the same as adding a negative. So we're going to change this into plus -2. The -5 out front stays the same. I'm adding negatives. 5 negatives and 2 negatives is going to give me 7 negatives. Okay, let's do some practice in here for you. And go ahead and get started whenever you like on these. Okay, if you need more time, go ahead and pause the video here, take your time, and then come back and we will do these together. All right, here we go. How'd we do on these? Hopefully they're starting to get a little bit easier as you go. So we've got a negative minus a positive. We are going to take the subtraction. The first number is going to stay the same, but that negative is going to become plus a -6. -1 plus -6 gives us our -7. Here comes our next one. The -3 stays the same. The -5 is going to turn into plus -5. -3 plus -5, 3 negatives and 5 negatives. We add those numbers together to give us 8 negatives. Here comes the next one. First number is staying the same. Instead of having minus a regular 2, a positive 2, we're going to change that to adding a -2. 2 negatives and 7 negatives. -7 plus -2 is going to give us 9 negatives. And one more problem. -9 stays the same. The -1 is going to turn into plus -1. -9 plus -1, we're adding those negatives together, which is going to give us -10. All right, good job. You have now learned all of the different types of adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. There are 7 of them altogether that we have gone over. So before we end this video, I just want to review these 3 types of subtraction, and then I'm going to add one final video at the end of this that puts all 7 types together so that you can practice doing them when they're all mixed up. We want to train the brain to be able to look at a problem and be like, oh, I see what kind of problem that is, and be able to pull that information out of your brain. A little bit harder than when you have the same kind of problem that you're doing over and over again, like we were just doing here. So let us do a review / practice of the 3 kinds of problems that we did here. So I'm going to start with the first type of problem, which is a positive minus negative. And hold on a second, I'm going to pop all 3 kinds of these problems up here for you, and then you can practice them. Okay, here is your review of 3 different types of problems that we learned in this video. So go ahead and pause that and give these 4 problems a try using all of your strategies. Write all of your steps down, write nice and big, spread out, go slow, stop and stare when you get stuck. Use your notes to help you, and know that you have all of the concepts that you need to know in your brain to be able to solve these problems. And go ahead and come back when you are done, and we will go over these together. Okay, let us go over these problems and then we will be done with adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. So let's start with this pink problem here. This is problem type number 5, a positive minus a negative. How did you start this one off? Do you see the double negative here? We're going to turn that into a positive number. So we're going to end up with a basic addition problem. 7 plus 2 equals 9. How did that one go? Good. Okay, so let's move on to this green problem here. This is problem type number 6. It's a level 1 problem. So we have a double negative here, a negative out front. We don't really care about this negative out front right now. When you have this double negative, we want to start by turning this into an addition problem. Once you do that, comes a little bit easier. The negative is out front, right? We know if we swap this around, we're going to give ourselves the opportunity to change this into a subtraction problem. So we end up with 6 minus 2, which is going to equal 4. How was that? Are they starting to feel a little bit easier as you do more and more practice? You're going to be doing so much of this in middle and high school math that these will become more and more automatic. The students that I've worked with who've learned it this way go on and it just gets easier and easier and easier. So, okay, let's do this next green problem. We've got a level 2 green problem here. Although we're not going to worry that it's a level 2 because you know how to do this. So we're going to start by making this simpler. We've got this double negative here. Let's get rid of that right away. Okay, we've got a negative out front. It doesn't matter that it's a bigger negative, that it's 5 minus 3. So sorry, that it's 5 versus 3. We're still going to pop that negative over and put it second. And the reason we do that is because then we have plus a negative, which is going to turn this into 3 minus 5. Remember this, the very first thing that we learned in this video series, a little minus a big. So we can do big minus little here, which is 2. So our little minus big is going to be negative 2. Okay, last problem here. We've got this blue problem here. We've got a negative minus a positive number. So this is the most recent one that we were doing, where we can actually take this negative and turn it into, sorry, take this minus, I should say, and turn it into plus a negative. The negative 1 stays the same out front. So now we have a negative plus another negative. Also from the first video, a negative plus a negative. We're just going to add those negatives together. 1 negative and 8 negatives is going to give us 9 negatives. And you are all done. All right, good work. So you know what I'm going to do? If you've already paused and taken notes, you are good to go. If you haven't taken notes, I'm going to go back and flip through these slides so that you can pause and grab anything that you need on these, and then we will be done. Okay, so these are the slides if you need them. I'm going to probably just give you a second on each of them. Pause if you need to take notes on these. Here we go. All right, we are all done. Great work on this. I'm going to have one final video after this where we put together all 7 types and give you some additional practice on this. Great work. I will see you in the next video.